Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Ask Away. As always, and it is my pinned message in the chat, but just in case nobody has noticed that, and for those of you who are joining us for the first time, as always in Ask Away, I will be responding first to questions that were submitted ahead of time by my patrons and my channel members. And then once I get through all of the pre-submitted questions, I will turn my full attention to the live chat for the rest of the show. So if you're joining us in the live chat right now and you have a question for me or something you want to talk about, or you were planning on being generous and donating a super chat or something like that, please, if possible, hold on to all of that until I get through the patron and member questions, and then I can pay full attention to the live chat, because until then, I will not be looking at the live chat all the time, and I will most certainly miss whatever you want me to see. So that being said, let's get started right away by going to the patron and member questions. And the first one of those this time around comes from Matt L., who says, so have you ever tried Star Trek Online? After finding out your lack of interest for tabletop games, I figured I may as well ask about video games and mention there's a Star Trek tabletop game as well, in case that could sway you. No, the fact that there's a Star Trek tabletop game does not sway me at all. I'm still not interested in tabletop games, and I'm not going to play the Star Trek tabletop game. I have never played Star Trek Online either. I have played some other Star Trek video games in the past. In some cases in the very distant past. In the early and mid 90s, there were a couple of Star Trek PC games that I played. There was Star Trek 25th Anniversary, and then also Star Trek Judgement Rights, that are both based on Star Trek, the original series. And actually, I have those on my computer now. I got them. I rebought them on Steam probably about 5 or 6 years ago now. I don't play them very often, but I have them. And every once in a while, I might get the itch and decide to play Star Trek Judgment Rights or Star Trek 25th Anniversary, but they're like point-and-click adventure game type things. And they're fun. And I've played other Star Trek video games in the past. And I've played off and on for the past several years. I've played the Star Trek mobile game, Timelines. I haven't played that for years, but I played it off and on for a little while. But no, I've never played Star Trek Online. I'm not... In the same way that I am not a fan of tabletop role-playing games, I'm not really a fan of the massively multiplayer online games. Like, it's just not my thing. I am much more apt to enjoy a video game that I can just play on my own, where there's not like a social element to it, where it's just, it's just me playing the video game. Those are the games I tend to enjoy the most, because I think part of it is my formative experience with video games was I was a kid and I had a Nintendo, and I usually played video games by myself. And if I played with someone else, I had a friend over, or me and my brother would play, and you played with other people in the room with you. It wasn't like an online thing where you played with a bunch of different people and you were connected over the internet. You just, if you played more than one player, it was someone who was there with you. So that's kind of just still, because I've never been a big gamer anyway, and it's never been that important to me. That's just kind of how I connect to it. And if and on the odd instance when I am interested in playing a video game, it's usually something like that, not like a massive, online multiplayer game. So, but no, never played Star Trek Online, never really wanted to, and no interest whatsoever in a Star Trek tabletop role-playing game. Havar B. Hajem says, I'm curious, what do you think about the phenomenon that Jordan Peterson has become the last 5 to 6 years? You heard any of his talks? Or are your opinions based on a few selected quotes taken out of context? I have found him to be a genuinely good person, speaking the truth. That will very often get you in all sorts of trouble. Like Ben Horn said in Twin Peaks, always tell the truth and start with the hardest truth of them all first. Truth as in reference to you first and foremost. What else can you truly know about anything but yourself? Well, okay. Here's what I take issue with when you say that Jordan Peterson speaks the truth. Jordan Peterson first rose to prominence for many of us by blatantly and aggressively and insistently lying about a law in Canada. One of the things that brought him to prominence several years ago was when he claimed falsely that Canada was about to make it illegal to misgender someone, and that he could actually, I think he not only lose his job, but like go to jail for misgendering someone. And he announced that he was going to refuse to call trans people by their preferred pronouns as a matter of principle. So on that basis alone, fuck Jordan Peterson. Even if he hadn't said or done anything else, the fact that he tried to take a principled stand by saying, I will not call trans people by their pronouns. Fuck him. Fuck him, fuck him, fuck him. He's a piece of shit. And he's a liar because he made up shit, or at least grossly misinterpreted stuff about that Canadian law that he was talking about. So no, he's not an honest person. He's not a good person. He's a liar, and he's a demagogue, and he's a bigot. So yes, I have heard of him. And no, I don't have a very good opinion of him. I think he's a piece of shit. So there you go. Fuck Jordan Peterson. Next question. David Colby says, I think one of my favorite examples of fiction is fiction that pretends very hard to be stupid, but is actually very intelligent and has a lot of interesting stuff to say. I recently enjoyed some Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, which has a cyborg ninja kung fu fighting a United States senator who has superpowers thanks to playing college football and being full of nanomachines. And yet, despite this being objectively stupid, Senator Armstrong is the most pitch-perfect Trump critique I've ever seen. Oh, did I mention this came out in 2013? And the themes are all about American imperialism and how cops serve corporate interests and the wealthy abuse poorer nations for their own profit, stuff smarter media would never touch with a 10-foot pole. What's your favorite dumb but secretly smart media? I mean, once upon a time when I was in high school, I would have maybe said South Park, but I don't think I would say that anymore because South Park has jumped the shark quite a few years ago, and I would no longer want to claim South Park as being that. I'm not really sure what I would say, to be honest. Nothing really comes to mind. I agree with you. I do enjoy that type of thing, you know, when something seems like it's really dumb, but it's actually really smart. I can't think of anything off the top of my head right now, so I apologize for not having a good answer to this question, but the story you just described sounds, I mean, the way you describe it, it sounds tremendous. I don't know if I would actually enjoy it if I watched it or whatever it is, or read it or whatever it is, but yeah, the description you just laid out there in your question sounds hilarious. But I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that is a good example of that. So sorry, I fail at answering your question. Stephen G. Clenard. Steve, you're a DC Comics guy. Maybe you can help me with some questions that have been vexing me for some time. There are Christian movies and Christian music, but why are there no Christian superheroes? Given the decline in Christianity and the success of the MCU, it seems strange that they haven't jumped on that bandwagon. Speaking of which, do you think this would be a good premise for a Christian superhero? Jesus Christ Man. Sent to Earth to be the savior of all mankind by his mighty ally God the Father Man. He's kind of a Superman allegory. Jesus Christ Man has the power to forgive sins, walk on water, and turn water into wine. Holy Spirit, Batman. Batman 66 narrator. But what's this? The Prince of Peace, executed on the cross by the sinister Pontius Pilate man and his dastardly centurions? Could this really be the end of the King of Kings? Don't get left hanging. Tune in this Sunday to find out. Same Jesus Christ time. Same Jesus Christ channel. Thoughts? I think it's amazing, and your timing, of course, is impeccable. I think it could really work. I will challenge you a little bit, though. You say there are no Christian superheroes. Have we forgotten Bible Man? Have we forgotten Rocket Pack Jack? There are Christian superheroes. I mean, they all suck, and they have achieved absolutely no cultural penetration to speak of outside of a small bubble of Christians of a particular stripe, nor do they deserve to, because, as I said, they're awful, but they do exist. So, you know, Let's not engage in Christian superhero. Let's not engage in Christian superhero erasure. Okay. But yes, Jesus Christ, man, sounds amazing. Jesus Christ, man. Next question from Black Cover 95, who's up to episode 80 something on the Ensign's log. Oh, you can do it. You can do it. You're almost caught up. Important. Since it's not one-to-one, is there a guide for season 4 onward? I want to see the respective TNG episodes first. First of all, let me stop you there. No, not really. I guess I could ask Jason about that, but I could ask Jason about a lot of this other stuff too. What's with the weird character assassination of Galactic Commissioner Ferris? I rewatched the Galileo 7 and he was perfectly normal and reasonable. If anything, Kirk was the more entitled and obstructive one. In episode 29, Jason's name is garbled. Was the audio messed up or is his name really unpronounceable? Are Cyrano Jones and Harry Mudd really alike? Cyrano is a troublemaker, but not the smarmy con man Mudd is. Why do you think they're so similar? What's with that weird music at the end of episode 49? Has nothing to do with anything. Is Spot based on in real life pets? Was episode 73's quarantine COVID inspired? If Lenore's fugitive history is erased, does that mean Charon's still populated? Are Beale and Lokai no longer the last two? If Steve changed history, does Memory Alpha have a different TEL, that is the Ensign's log, than us? Where's the new timeline's log? What did Dana grow up with? So these are all amazing questions that I'm going to remember to ask Jason and have us talk about on the Ensign's Log live stream, which is tomorrow night. And I'm sorry that you won't be able to make it, but hopefully you'll get to watch the archived version after it's over, and we will have answers to all of your questions, because I know you've been saving up questions for this for a while. So we will talk about all of this on the Ensign's Log live stream tomorrow night, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern on this very channel. And yes, the link to that is in the description of this video, and I will plug it again before the show is over. But yeah, we will definitely talk about that on the show tomorrow night. Although I will tell you, I don't know what Jason will say, but as far as Commissioner Ferris, it's because it was funny. That's why we did Commissioner Ferris that way, because it was funny. That's why we do most of what we do, because it's funny, or because we think it's funny. Jim Baker. I'm a trans ally. My default position is to defend trans rights. Also, I tend to be long-winded. The space limits of your subform prevented me from including the context of the argument that I shared last week. I hope that you would have seen the full discussion I left in the comments section of your recent relevant video on the topic. There I explained that not only was that a good argument, it logically leads to a pro-trans conclusion. I was actually arguing for a massive expansion of trans sports across the board. The important point beyond mere musings was to inform fellow trans apologists when they encounter that argument being misused by the right, how to turn it around on them and show it should lead to more trans rights, not less. The fault is mine, of course. I made two critical mistakes, which led to our breakdown in communication. First, with a topic this heated, I should have made my intentions clear from the beginning. Second, when I realized I had run out of space long and then ran out of space again. Well, look, if I misunderstood your intentions or I misunderstood the purpose of your question last time, then I apologize. I did not read your comment. And I mean, you know, look, the character limit on the questions is intentional on my part. I don't want people to write me a book when they're asking a question. So I apologize for if there was a breakdown in communication, but I mean, if you can't make your intentions clear in the amount of space that you have to ask a question, you know, like maybe shorten the question or ask a less complex question or something. You know, there are ways to handle this. But if indeed I judged you improperly last time, then I apologize. If your intention was to be trans inclusive, because the reading I had of your question last time was that it was quite transphobic. But if that's incorrect, then I apologize. Andrew says, salutations one and all. Hope everyone is staying as safe, well, and healthy as possible. Bit of a conundrum at work. The hospital administrator, aka my boss, is both a transphobic, anti-feminist bigot and a colossal wanker. After having loudly criticized a female member of staff while she was within earshot about her lack of pride in her appearance because of her attire, as he doesn't believe in women wearing trousers, I have come to the only logical response and would like your opinion. What should I wear to work tomorrow? A long, elegant dress or a short, sexy skirt? I think the latter would pair better with my steel-toed boots. I draw the line at high heels. Okay, Andrew, look. I understand that you want to make a statement, and I appreciate that, but it's time that we stop the silliness and we act like adults and we start to take this seriously, all right? Now you are a professional and you are going to a professional environment to do your job, to earn a living, right? To do the important work that you do. So obviously you need to wear the short skirt. You can't be wearing a long, elegant dress at work. It's going to be dragging. It's going to be getting in the way. You're going to be stepping on it with those steel-toed boots. That's completely off the table. So it has to be the short, sexy skirt. That's the only practical option. So, come on. Wear the sexy skirt, not the long, elegant dress. That's just, come on. Seriously, why are we even talking about this? Wear the sexy skirt. And best of luck to you, my friend. Kevin C. Jones. Hey, Steve. It's my first question as a supporter. 99 cents is a steal. I always felt like it was disappointing that we never saw Bajor join the Federation in Deep Space Nine. Are there any plot points in Trek that you feel are missed opportunities? And if you don't have one, any thoughts on mine? I do have thoughts on yours. I agree with you. I am one of the I've never taken a poll, but it seems like I'm one of the relatively rare Trekkies, and specifically Deep Space Nine focused Trekkies, who actually prefers the Bajor-centric stuff to the Dominion stuff. The Dominion stuff is very, very good. And a lot of the episodes, after about season 3 and 4, when it really shifts over and the antagonist becomes the Dominion and the focus of the show moves largely away from Bajor and toward Cardassia and the Dominion. It's still a great show, and there are some absolutely fantastic episodes in that second half of the series. And the overall quality of the series, I think, probably goes up, in general. But I like the Bajor stuff. And I like the series being mostly focused on Bajor. I think that is really interesting and made it feel different. You know what I mean? Made it feel different than other Star Trek shows, because the focus wasn't the entire galaxy and the fate of the quadrant, et cetera, et cetera. The focus was much smaller. It was this planet that has been terribly wounded and is in the process of healing and has this really interesting relationship with its neighbor, which is also the country that is responsible for its destruction. And there's a lot of complicated politics to navigate and lots of really interesting characters that are on both sides, and the way they interact and the way the Federation Starfleet characters kind of come into the middle of it and the way they interact with either side. It's not a major disappointment. It's not something that I think ruins the show, but it is a little disappointing that there is no real resolution to the Bajor story that was the thing that started the series. And another part of it is, like, as a writer and as a critic, I happen to really like natural endpoints, and a natural endpoint would be something like, if your TV show is about high school students, right? Them graduating from high school is a natural endpoint, because it's something that will happen as in the natural course of their lives, right? So the show is about kids in high school. When they graduate from high school, that's a good point to end the show, because it was about people in high school. Now they're not in high school anymore. Natural endpoint. And with Deep Space Nine, Bajor joining the Federation would have been a wonderful natural endpoint, right? Sisko was sent to Deep Space Nine. Part of his mission from the beginning was to help prepare Bajor to join the Federation. 7 years later, that mission has been completed. Bajor is about to join the Federation, and a very big, important part of the last episode is Bajor joining the Federation. Now, that didn't happen, but if it had, that would have been a really nice natural endpoint. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get that. Now, what we got was still great, but yeah, I do kind of wish we had gotten more closure from Bajor, and that what had been set up in the first season, as far as that goes, had been paid off a little better than it was, instead of being largely just kind of abandoned. So yeah, I think we were very much on the same page with that, you know, there is some disappointment in not seeing Bajor join the Federation, or have it be resolved in some kind of definitive, satisfying way. Danny K says, "Hi, Steve. If you could create a Muppets remake of any movie, which would you choose? One caveat, you have to keep one of the original actors in it. Thanks a lot. Hope you're doing well." Well, I mean, of course you have to keep one of the original actors in it. That's how the Muppets movies work. My initial thought was Citizen Kane and keep Orson Welles and make everybody else Muppets. But I also had the thought, what if we did like a Star Trek movie as Muppets? And of course, the best Star Trek movie for my money is still, and probably always will be, Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan. So we do Wrath of Khan Muppets, like the Muppet version of Wrath of Khan. Ricardo Montalban stays as Khan because he is such a perfect actor to be in a Muppet movie, right? So Ricardo Montalban stays as Khan. All the other characters are played by Muppets. Kermit is Captain Kirk, of course. Spock would be Fozzie. I know that sounds counterintuitive at first because Fozzie is not like a logical character, but he is Kermit's best friend. So that death scene when Kermit is saying a tearful goodbye to Fozzie after he has been exposed to radiation in engineering, right, is going to be hilarious. Can you imagine a scene between Kermit and Fozzie played totally straight, where Kermit as Kirk and Fozzie as Spock are acting out the Spock death scene from Star Trek II? That's hilarious. That's the whole reason to do it. And if you want, you can turn the fact that ordinarily Fozzie is not a highly logical type. That can be like a running joke in the movie. You know, like other characters can kind of make winking reference to the fact that, you know, in quote unquote real life, Fozzie is not a Vulcan. You know, he is not a cold, rational, logical person. But in this particular story, he is trying his best to play that role. So, yeah. Miss Piggy would be Savick, of course. We'd have to arrange, or actually, no, Miss Piggy wouldn't be Savick. What am I thinking? Miss Piggy would be Dr. Marcus. Duh. Miss Piggy would be Dr. Marcus. Scooter would be Scotty, because Scooter's always running things behind the scenes. Actually, yes, that's perfect. If Piggy was Dr. Marcus, then we could have her, when all the other scientists beam down to escape Khan's boarding party, we could have a scene there that's not in the original movie where Piggy as Carol stays behind briefly, and she can have like a fight with Khan's crew before she escapes, you know, so he can get there, hi-ya! And she can have Miss Piggy using karate, because you got to have that in a Muppet movie. Come on. So yeah. But Star Trek II with Muppets, Captain Kermit, Spock as Fozzie, Piggy as Dr. Marcus, and you could do Robin as David. Come on, this is just come on, it's all coming together. But anyway, and Ricardo Montalban still doing duty as the human character playing Khan. Fozzie explains his jokes logically. That's how you make the Fozzie Spock connection. Anyway, that's it. So next question is from Agent Meister. Peldor Joy, Steve, is everything okay, big guy? Let me elaborate. When I first started watching Ask Away, you had a preamble, as you do now, asking people wanting to submit super chats to wait until you've read the pre-submitted questions from your wonderful patrons. But I've noticed in recent months the word wonderful seems to be missing from that notice. We're just patrons, and nay, a wonderful or even a fabulous in sight. Don't you love us anymore, Steve? Have we done something? Is there a disruption in the Shives verse sucking the joy out of life? Are you resigned to the fact that our species will go extinct, that our planet will become barren, the sun will die out as all suns will die out, the universe will implode again or expand into nothingness? So what's the point? Is that it, Steve? Or am I reading too much into this? P.S. When you're climbing a ladder, do you hold on to the sides or the rungs? I apologize for failing to be as effusive when I am referring to my patrons and members as I have been in the past. It is not an intentional slight on my part at all. Of course I love you. I love all of you. I love all of my patrons and members. I love all of my viewers, and I love all of my supporters as much as I ever have, if not more so. So please do not feel that the bloom has fallen off the rose, that my passion has dimmed for my patrons and members, because it has not, I assure you. And I think I hold on to the sides. I'm trying to think the last time I climbed a ladder. I think I hold on to the sides. That's a very good question. The sides just kind of feel more stable, you know, because you can have your arms like at shoulder length, or at shoulder width, excuse me, and you're just sort of right there. It seems a more stable arrangement. Yeah, I think I hold on to the sides. Alexander Darkov, as a fan of many things myself, I have a preference from where my merchandise comes from. McFarlane Toys for action figures is a major one, so I was wondering, do you have a preference as to where your Star Trek figures come from? Or do you not care as long as it looks right? I have a hard time imagining you picking up a poorly designed Captain Sisko figure to display with the others. Well, the figures that I have back there, I acquired all of those to use in the Star Trek photo comics that I make, that I haven't actually had time to make for a long time, but in theory that I make, and hopefully I'll have time to get back to making them again. And most of them, in fact, I think all of those back there, all of the Star Trek ones are playmates from the 90s and early 2000s, the sort of 9-inch scale ones. And I like those because they're big enough to work with, and you can take photographs of them and they look good, you know, and they're relatively posable, so you can have them pose in different ways. Like, you can't change their facial expressions, but you can have them pose in certain ways to suggest emotions. And they have the cloth clothes, you know, they're not just all molded plastic. So they're good for photo comics and stuff. And so when I look at buying new Star Trek figures, I try to get ones that would match that scale, that are either from the same line that those are from, or like the Mego ones that are about the same scale and look good next to those, you know. So that's really my main concern about Star Trek figures. I don't get them just to collect them. I get them because in theory, I'm using them to make photo comics. So I want them all to be in the same scale. And the same thing with the Batman and Superman and Robin dolls that I have, that I used in a video a few weeks ago. And they're not actually Megos, but they're 8-inch scale. So it's roughly similar to the Star Trek ones. That's like kind of a good scale when you're working with them, when you're actually using them for videos or for comics and stuff, because they're bigger than like the little 4-inch ones. They're not huge like the 12-inch ones. They're 8 or 9 inches is a good scale, right? So yeah, that's really my main consideration, not the manufacturer or anything like that. It's the scale. And yeah, of course I want them to be high quality too. But yeah, that's my main consideration. What if I'm going to get a new figures, does it match the scale? Shazy the Byronic Hero Wannabe. Hi, Steve. Have you ever had to deal with unrequited friendships where you felt as though you had to put in all the effort in maintaining a friendship with either someone in particular or a group, and felt like the superfluous one among your peers? This unfortunately seems to be a constant in my life, but I feel that I have been making recent progress by attempting to establish clear boundaries and communicate my feelings with current friends and new prospects. However, I still greatly fear rejection and ending up alone, despite now seeing these emotions through the lens of evolutionary psychology. Would you have any other advice to share? Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't really have any advice that I can share because I don't have a lot of experience with unrequited friendship from that side of it. I have from the other side where people seem like they want to be my friend, but I either don't have the time to give that friendship the time that it would deserve, or I'm just not interested in hanging out with them. So they might want to be friends or closer friends with me, and I'm just not interested in that. So I kind of have to find ways of putting them off without hurting their feelings. And that happens online sometimes too, where people will contact me and it feels like they want to be buddies or they want to be friends, and I'm just not interested. But I don't want to be like an asshole about it, but I don't want to encourage it either. So it's tough. But no, I mean, if I feel interested in being a friend and being friends with someone, but I get the feeling that they're not interested in being friends with me, then I just move on. Like I just cut bait. I'm like, okay, they're not, whatever, that's fine. And I just go do something else. So, I unfortunately for you and being able to give you advice, I don't feel like I really have any to give because I have not really been in your place. I guess the advice I could give is if you feel like you are putting in all of the effort to maintain a friendship and you're not getting any of it back, and that is, worrying to you or bothersome to you, then you don't have to keep putting in the effort. You can find other friends where it would be a more balanced thing, where they would be more interested in being friends with you, and it wouldn't just be you constantly having to maintain the friendship. And it's not that easy, of course. You can't just go out and just be like, I'm going to make a new friend today and go do it, And I do understand the feeling of, well, maybe I'll just always be alone, or maybe I just won't have any friends. I get that can be a very real form of anxiety. But, if it's constantly you putting in the effort to maintain a particular friendship with a particular person, you don't have to. You can always cut bait and be like, well, this is obviously this person isn't as into being my friend as I'm into being their friend. So I'll just move on and find somebody else. But I feel like that, I can't really give you any advice other than that, because as I say, I don't have a lot of experience in it, or with it in that way, from that perspective. General Contact Unit Problem Child says, the plot of The Last Hilda we watched made me think of something. Nowhere space is effectively infinite, meaning the Nissa can't possibly be occupying very much of it, but they claim all of it and assert they have a right to keep all humans out. Do you think it's reasonable for an indigenous population, which is what the Nissa represent in that episode's plot, has the right to claim sovereignty over an entire landmass when they only have a population that can occupy a small part of it? Like, imagine an island the size of Madagascar that has a native population of like 9,000 people. Would it be reasonable for them to claim dominion over the whole island and say no one can move there, even to areas none of them live in or go very often? P.S. You forgot Enterprise's Regeneration, the Borg episode in your horror and Trek vid. The first act at the North Pole is an homage to The Thing. P.S. Solidarity with Ukraine. Yes, solidarity with Ukraine. Absolutely. And yes, Regeneration is not only a great horror episode, it's one of the best episodes of Enterprise, period. So that is a very good catch on your part. I probably should have mentioned that when I sort of glossed over the horror-themed Enterprise episodes. Regeneration is a great episode and a great horror episode. I think Madagascar is a good analogy because the nowhere space where the Nissa live, they're like the only ones who can naturally get in there, right? The humans in the last episode, the humans had to, like, the weather lady had to construct like a special machine in order to get in. Like, it's isolated from the rest of existence, from the rest of reality. And the Nissa seem like they're the only creatures that can naturally go back and forth. So they have a little bit more of a claim to it than if they were just people that happened to live like on a continent and anybody else can come there too, right? So it is a little bit more analogous to like a very isolated island. So, I mean, if there is a native population of Madagascar and they say, hey, nobody else can live here, this is our island. I mean, yeah, I kind of think they do have the right to do that. Like, I mean, they were there first. And as long as it's not a situation where like, but there's no place else to live and people are going to die if they can't live on this island. If that's not the situation, then I think they have every right to say, hey, we decided this is ours. We don't want anybody else to come in. This is our island. So don't come here. Right. And that's kind of what the Nissa are doing with their space. It's kind of an island. It's cut off from other places. Humans can't really easily enter it anyway, unless they come with a Nissa. So it's the Nissa's place, and they can decide that they don't want humans there if they want. That's how I feel about it. So no, I don't think it's like a big problem for them to say this is just for us. Humans, like humans have the entire planet. Like we have the entire planet. The Nissa can have their magical nowhere space, as far as I'm concerned. Daniel says, hey, Steve, I'm not a longtime viewer. In fact, I feel I was indoctrinated against your channel several years ago by the avalanche of so-called anti-SJW content on YouTube. I've recently been turned back onto your channel by Dusty Smith, who has urged his followers to reconsider your content, and now I'm embarrassed as to how easily I was misled. As such, I now contribute to your channel monthly. My question is, what do you think of us, those who fell for the rhetoric? Are we stupid, gullible? I feel angry that I was misled, but also frustrated that I fell for it. Love the content. Thank you for making it. Well, first of all, I mean, I knew me and Dusty were on pretty good terms, but I was not aware that he had been like, encouraging people specifically to follow my channel or to check out my content. So, I mean, I wasn't aware of that. So thanks, Dusty. I appreciate that. Dusty's another guy who, I mean, was kind of in that for, years and years ago, he was kind of like an anti-SJW type, and he has sort of come around and seen the error of his ways. And like I said, I think Dusty and I don't talk all that often, but I think we're on good terms. And I mean, I have no issues with Dusty. I think he seems like he's doing good work and he seems like a good dude. But I didn't know that he was doing that. So that's really nice to know. Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly forgiving about that sort of thing. The only people that I have no forgiveness in my heart for are the people who were actually like creating the anti-SJW content. Like if you are someone who was a viewer of some of that stuff and you took them at face value and said, oh, this Steve Shives guy sounds like an asshole. But now you have come to realize that they were wrong, or that, you've watched some of my stuff on your own and you decided that they weren't being fair to me or whatever. I have no grudge that I hold against you. I have no ill will towards you. I mean, I wouldn't say that you were necessarily stupid or gullible. Yeah, I feel like, yeah, you fell for something. You were lied to. You were misled. You were, there were people who were pandering to your sense of outrage about things, maybe, or things that you were afraid of, or things that you were ignorant about, and maybe you were susceptible to that for certain reasons. But you have grown, you have changed, you have matured, and you're in a different place now. And I personally am grateful for it. If you have found that you actually enjoy my content, I think that's wonderful, and I'm welcome. Like, thank you for being here, and thank you, especially thank you for being a supporter. So no, I'm not mad at people like you. I bear no grudge against people like you. I do bear a grudge against people who made those YouTube videos and spent years attacking me and attacking my wife, now my ex-wife, but I still don't forgive them for anything they said about her, or anything they said about us, or anything they said about me. None of them have ever asked me for my forgiveness, which I don't expect them to, but if they did, they would not have it. Like I'm not going to forgive them. I'm not interested in forgiving them, even if they wanted that, which I don't think they do. They're shit on my shoes. Like they're nothing to me. I wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. As my father might say, I wouldn't piss down their throat if their stomach was on fire. Like they're absolute garbage people to me, and I have no good for them, no goodwill for them at all. No empathy in my heart for them at all. But those are the people that were responsible for it. Not folks like you who just kind of went along with it. And if you have decided that that is no longer where you're at, and you feel that you were misled or duped in some way, I just want you to know that as far as I'm concerned, we're okay. Like if you have changed, if you have grown out of that phase and you're different now, that's fine with me. It's the people that were responsible for whipping all that up, and not just against me, against all kinds of other people too. Right? Because I was not the only target of that kind of thing. And I was all told, I was a relatively minor target, to be honest. But the people that did that kind of thing are the ones that I will not ever forgive for that, because they're without excuse. But people like you, we're okay. We're cool. Isaiah Taylor says, hello, Steve. I have 92 subscribers to my YouTube channel. Started it last year. Cool, huh? Absolutely. It's very cool. Congratulations. Also, given recent talk of the world on the verge of another world war, will you be making a video about World War III and its place in Star Trek lore? Riker mentions over 600 million people died in World War III in First Contact. I'm curious on what your thoughts are about this topic. Thanks. I mean, I'm not sure really what I would say about it, because other than the fact that it happened and a little bit about some of the sort of aftermath of it was that we've gotten little dribs and drabs of in episodes throughout the franchise. I mean, it's just, I don't really know what I would say about it other than it seems like it sucked. It seems like it was a very important and very terrible event that the planet eventually recovered from and built a much better society from the ashes. But I mean, as far as World War III itself, it's not actually that important to Star Trek because it's backstory. And it's not even backstory that directly affects anything that we see in the show. It's just like, oh yeah, a couple hundred years ago there was World War III and it was really terrible. But other than that, there's really not a whole lot to say. So I don't know what I would say about it. But if anybody has a pitch for like a specific thesis about World War III that might be interesting, I would be open to that. But I can't think of any right now. There's just not enough about it that we have been told in the shows for me to have any kind of specific thoughts on it. Jacob Monroe says, hello, Steve. Instead of bringing back the same old cop format, how about giving a show to the departments that need more love? What would make a better Law and Order show? Law and Order Internal Affairs? Or Law and Order Public Defenders? Those are both excellent suggestions, but I would definitely go with Internal Affairs. I think a cop show centered on the Internal Affairs Department would be a terrific idea. It would be a great way to do a cop show that would hopefully avoid falling prey to accusations of propaganda. It would be a great way to do a cop show and avoid it just being another cop show, because the focus would be internal. The focus would be like the heroes of the show would be the cops who investigate wrongdoing in the police department. And you could have them sort of caught between two sides where they're, of course, because they're going to be the heroes of the show, they're good cops. They want to do the right thing. They want to do their jobs. When they find other cops committing crimes or doing things wrong, they want these bad cops to be caught and to be prosecuted or taken off the job or learn their lesson or whatever. But they also have people over their head who just want to sweep things under the rug and want to make sure that the department looks good no matter what. And they don't really care about fixing the problems as long as it looks like the problems are being dealt with. Like, so they would be kind of caught in the middle, trying to do the right thing, but pressured from both sides to look the other way or to go easy on it, or, the thin blue line bullshit. Like, I think an internal affairs focused cop show would be tremendous. And I'm kind of surprised that we've never gotten one, because I think it's a great idea. Public defenders would be really good too, would have potential. But internal affairs, and I think I've said before, One of my favorite recurring characters on NYPD Blue was Sergeant Martens, who was with Internal Affairs. Because he was a character who, he was not a main character. He would come in every so often and just sort of show up if the story called for him. But he was not well liked by the other cops, by the regulars that we were supposed to be identifying with. You know, Sipowicz hated Martens. Sipowicz's partners, who were a lot more likable and more lighter than Sipowicz, they also didn't like Martens. Like you could tell that the Internal Affairs detectives were incredibly vilified by the other cops. You know, they were mistrusted. Oh, they're cops who investigate cops. Like, they were very disliked. But Martens was maybe one of the most, if not the most virtuous character on the show. He had a very gruff personality, and you know, he was not impressed by anything our heroes did, and he was not a very sort of happy or expressive or effusive character. He was very taciturn and very sort of, you know, self-contained. But he was always a stand-up cop. He was never revealed to be on the take or crooked. You know, it would have been very easy to make him, because of his personality, it would have been very easy to reveal that, like, he was a bad cop. He was, you know, he was in Internal Affairs and he was supposed to be investigating crooked cops, but he actually was one himself. You know, they never did that. He was always shown to be ethically, morally above reproach. And he was one of the only cops who you could say that about, that we ever saw in the show. Even the good guys were often kind of morally compromised or challenged or complex in some way. Martens was always shown to be 100% a good guy who was just not liked because he was in Internal Affairs. I loved his character. And so I think an Internal Affairs focused cop show could be quite something. Some random geek who is working overtime on the weekend during an anime convention to earn money to give to their disabled friends. Hey, Steve, I wanted to respond to Shazy, the aspiring critical thinker question in Ask Away 106 about how to maintain a relationship with a family member with vastly different politics. I wanted to share my experience of me being a non-binary anarcho-syndicalist living with a Gamergator Trump supporter younger brother, but the writing got away from me. I don't think I can fit that mini essay into 1,000 characters, so I will write it on my own and see if I can get a short version under 2,000 characters next time, maybe 1,000. But since I ran out of time this Ask Away, I will ask you a short question. Steve, boobs? Yes. I am in favor. I am definitely in favor of boobs. Yes. Yes. The answer is yes to your question, geek. And thank you so much for asking. Norman Bookwald. Hi, Steve. So I've seen your reviews of Picard, and I can't agree more that the writing for this season is plain bad. The first 2 episodes had much promise, and then after the logistics, the bad dialogue, the lame twists, the plot reveals, and the Glee-like burst into song, among more, is just too much. I know season 3 is practically in the can, but with the TNG crew coming, what would you want to happen in your dream 3rd season of Picard? Outside of a Simpsons intro, as with Star Wars, saying that the first 2 seasons never happened, of course. So I thought about this earlier. I went for a walk earlier, and because at first I was going to say, look, I don't know, right? But I went for a walk earlier, and I was thinking about your question, and I came up with at least a very general pitch for what season 3 of Picard could be, without pretending the first 2 seasons never happened. I don't think it's necessary to pretend the first 2 seasons never happened. Even though I have not liked this current season at all, there's no reason to erase it from history in order to have a good 3rd season. So I would have a couple of rules first for season 3 if I was writing it. The first rule would be no legacy characters other than the original TNG cast and characters that have already been established in Picard, right? So no more legacy characters other than the TNG cast and like someone like Seven of Nine, right? Who is a legacy character from Voyager, but she's already been introduced in Picard, so she stays. You know, so like nobody else from Deep Space Nine, nobody else from Voyager. If the point of the show, if the point of the season is to give a send-off to the TNG crew and also to give a send-off to Picard as its own show, then we do that. And we don't do crossovers with anything else. It's just TNG and Picard, and that's it. That's rule number one. Rule number two, no gratuitous fan service, no cutesy callbacks, no little, jokes, no deja vu jokes like, the guy on the van from Star Trek 4 or Rios saying, I'm from Chile, I only work in space. Like, no shit like that. If you want to write jokes, that's great. Write jokes, write original jokes. Don't just reference jokes from other stuff. Write your own original jokes. So those would be two very ironclad rules for me. And as far as like, no villains from the past, like no old scores to settle, nothing looking back. I would want it to be looking forward. So, and as far as like the plot, I was thinking for the first episode, it could be something like we need to have a reason for the old cast members to come back together. The old TNG crew, they have not seen each other for a very long time. So there has to be a reason for the old cast to assemble for something. So it has to be a big event. So maybe I was thinking like the inauguration of a new president of the Federation. And it's the first Klingon ever elected president of the Federation. Now, the Klingon Empire is not going to be a member of the Federation. They're still going to be their own independent thing. But there will be a Klingon who has been independently as an individual. He has been a or she, I don't know, whoever the president is. They are a citizen of the Federation, not a citizen of the Klingon Empire, and they have just been elected president of the Federation. The first Klingon Federation president, right? So we come to their inauguration, and it's a big event, and so all of the original cast are there along with like a million other people. And there's some kind of attack at the event. An assassination, an attempted assassination, something like that. Like the first Klingon Federation president is either killed or seriously injured, or there's an attempt to kill them. I haven't got all the exact details worked, but something like that happens. And there's some kind of crisis, and Picard and his old crew kind of are part of the evacuation, and they escape, and they all end up on the same ship. And then the ship that they are on is attacked by a mysterious attacker and is destroyed, and Picard and his crew manage to get off the ship in time before it explodes, and they survive the attack, and they get picked up by Captain Rios and the new Stargazer, and that's how Rios from the Picard cast kind of comes into things. And so they would have to figure out who was behind the attack, who wants the president dead. It could be something like they suspect that maybe it's someone in the Klingon Empire, or maybe it's someone from the Romulans who are still recovering from their son being destroyed, and maybe they still hold a grudge against the Klingons and think the Klingons having a Klingon president of the Federation plus the Klingon Empire being its own thing, that would make them too powerful and too threatening, so the Romulans would want to strike a blow against them, or try to sow discord between the Federation and the Klingons and pit them against each other. So there are all these suspicions about who could be behind it and whatever. And we're figuring 10 episodes again. So structure it so that by episode 5, we know who the assassin was who attacked and possibly killed the president. So we know who that assassin is. By episode 5, their identity has been discovered. They have been caught and arrested or killed or whatever. That their part in the story has been resolved. But we still have the people who put them up to it. We still have the ultimate mastermind behind the thing, and they need to be found, right? And I have 2 specific premises for episodes. I think at some point we need to do a standalone episode. I'd like to do several standalone episodes among this 10 episode season. But one standalone episode I have an idea for is they need to do something on a time crunch, and they don't have enough time in order to get it done. So they intentionally park their ship somewhere within the event horizon of a temporal anomaly that allows time to move faster aboard their ship than it does in the universe. So they have more time to work on the thing. Time is actually moving slower outside the ship than it is inside. So they have more time to work on this thing that they need to work on in order to get it ready to have be useful to them in time for this ticking clock to run out, right? So we have an episode like that where the ship is parked in an event horizon of some kind of temporal anomaly, and Geordi and you have it be Geordi and Dr. Girardi are working on something together. And that's like the A plot. And while they're working on that, the B plot is the crew of the ship. Let's say it's the Stargazer. The crew of the Stargazer is trying to maintain the ship's position and integrity and not be destroyed and not sucked into this temporal black hole thing, whatever that they're in, right? So that's that episode. And then I would want the main story to be wrapped up in episode 9. So episode 10 is just kind of an epilogue. And episode 10, and maybe we'll kill Picard for good. We'll kill Picard in episode 9. So Picard is dead at the end of episode 9. And episode 10 is about them bringing Picard's body back home to Earth. And for that, I would want to use, I couldn't do the exact same story, but I would want to use a lot of the ideas I used in my Stargazer fanfic. It wouldn't be exactly the same, but I would want to incorporate the idea I had of the Enterprise, the old crew the ship they're on discovers life signs on a planet that is in the path of a massive gamma ray burst that will hit the planet within 100 years and wipe out the civilization that lives on the planet. And they discover it's a pre-warp civilization, so they can't save them. They can't interfere because of the Prime Directive. But the civilization has just begun its space program, and the idea is, well, maybe if their space program gets up and running fast enough, Earth flew its first warp flight about 100 years after its first space flight. So maybe if these guys get their space program up and running fast enough, and then they have their first warp flight within 100 years before this gamma ray burst hits their civilization, then maybe they can appeal to the Federation, and then we can come in and help them and evacuate them or do something, and they won't, and their civilization won't die. And so that we can have the characters sort of resigned to this, and they can talk about it. And Geordi can say to Commander Riker or Captain Riker, do you think they're going to make it? And then the episode goes on a little bit, and the last scene is they're all standing there together at Picard's funeral or after Picard's funeral. And, Geordi can turn to Riker during a quiet moment and say, what do you think? And Riker can say, I think they will make it. And that can be the end of the series. Because I'm very pleased with myself for coming up with that moment, with that story, this, and ending it on a note of hope and a forward-looking note, not a backward-looking note. So, but it's very loose. It's just, there's no specifics there really, except for just ideas, and just a very general idea of how I would want to structure it. I would want to structure it so that, there's sort of a manhunt that is resolved in episode 5, and then something else that kicks off that is resolved in episode 9, and then episode 10 is kind of a wrap-up episode. But yeah, that's very, very roughly just based on what I came up with during my walk today. That would be like a starting point if I was tasked with breaking down a story for season 3 of Picard, with the original TNG crew coming along. That's roughly what I think I would do. Next question is from John Burns. Hey, Steve, hydrate. First, a commercial for Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story. Jimmy was a star in the BBC, and because of that, his crimes were covered up by a TV network. Imagine an actor committing crimes in the 70s and 80s, having his crimes covered up by an American TV network. Can't spell Cosby without CBS. Anyway, in 2018, Vice President Pence talked about the flexibility of capitalism and how because of regime change, investors could lose millions because when things change because of a country invading another country, suddenly laws can be ignored, even in countries where individual rights and property rights might have been fought for centuries. Russian billionaires are finding their assets being seized because of sanctions. These ideals are being pushed by Biden's administration, re a new world order. Capitalism's flexibility? Well, first of all, I watched that Jimmy Savile documentary, and I agree, it is excellent. And yeah, I guess Cosby is the closest that you could come in the United States to something like that. And obviously, yes, Cosby's crimes are monstrous, just as Jimmy Savile's were. I get the impression that Jimmy Savile was an even bigger deal in England than Cosby was here. Like, Cosby was obviously a huge star and an incredibly influential person in entertainment industry, but Jimmy Savile seems like he was like ubiquitous for a long time on British television. So I feel like it was maybe an even bigger deal to British people than Bill Cosby was to people in the United States. But yes, a roughly analogous situation and a really, really great documentary. 100% agree with you there. Is it capitalism's flexibility? I guess. I mean, I feel like even if we weren't a capitalist economy, you could still probably impose sanctions on other countries in other ways, even if you couldn't do it in exactly the same way that it's being done now. But I mean, I have no problem whatsoever with Russian billionaires' assets being seized. You know, I'm completely okay with that. I don't know if that's necessarily an advantage or disadvantage of capitalism, but I'm completely okay with it happening. You know, but I apologize. I didn't have time to read that article that you linked, so I don't know how that fits into anything. All right. Question from Dana, who is debating the pros and cons of a new side gig. Guten Abend, Stefan. Actually, I'm not sure if Stefan is necessarily more German than Steve, but work with me here, will you? Anywho, we're wrapping up our study of Shakespeare's tragedy Julius Caesar, which explores the consequences of power. See, folks tend to say that power corrupts, but does any amount of power corrupt? That seems unlikely, as if it were true, everyone would be corrupt and there'd be little point in exploring the matter. It seems clear that it's possible to have too little power as well, which results in a lack of ability to affect one's environment. So the question then is how much power is healthy, at what point power becomes harmful, and how we can tell. Actually, that's kind of three questions, but they're all related, and I'm well within the character limit, so you can just sit back and deal with it, Stefan. So what do you think? Well, I think it's a really good question. And I mean, part of what makes it a good question is there's not like an obvious, simple answer to it. I think as far as how much power is too much power, I think anytime when you get into power in terms of having power over other people's lives, having the power to affect other people without their consent or perhaps without even their knowledge, without their ability to do anything about it, then I think you run into potential problems. I think unchecked or largely unchecked power over other people is almost always going to be a problem. Because I think it's probably too absolutist to say that power always corrupts, but power tends to corrupt. Power has a corrupting influence. It doesn't mean that everybody will succumb to that influence, that everybody who attains any kind of power over people will automatically then, if they weren't already, become a horrible, evil person. But it's a hell of a lot easier to, if you have that kind of power, if you are not checked, and if you have enough power that you become accustomed to just having your way without needing to consult other people or take other people's needs or interests into account. I think that's really like the corrupting thing. That's the toxic thing about too much power, is that you get used to disregarding the needs of others. Your empathy is no longer needed. Your empathy is no longer rewarded. You know, it becomes vestigial. When you have so much power that your sense of empathy and humanity becomes vestigial, then that's too much power. So I don't know exactly how much that is, but I mean, I agree with you. People need to have some power over their own lives. They need to have some agency. They need to be able to make decisions that matter for themselves, for people around them, perhaps for their communities, for their whatever. But the power needs to be checked by other people with power, by the community, by governments, by the rule of law, by something, right? So that you can't just do whatever you want to anybody as much as you want, right? There have to be checks on your power. And if you are in a powerful position, like a high political office, there need to ideally be multiple checks on your power that overlap and come from different directions. So yeah, I mean, it's a good question, but I don't think I don't think power always corrupts, but I think it has that influence. And I think the most important point is that it needs to be limited and it needs to be checked. Because if it's not, then you could be in a lot of trouble. Even if you're the one with the power, you might end up in a lot of trouble because people might realize, oh shit, there's nothing else we can do. Let's just kill him. And then you'll know something. Anyway, next question is from Sent Merc. Hello, Steve. First question here. I recently noted an I love you mocks sign in an AEW crowd. And I thought to myself, I didn't expect Ferengi at an AEW event. This is beautiful. Which leads to my question. Do you think pro wrestling is still enjoyed in the 24th century? Who, in terms of species or individual people, would be fans? If you were tasked with making a pro wrestling episode of Star Trek, pick the show if you like, how would it go? I think the easiest scenario is Quark setting up a league after he realizes how much money he can make off choreographed fights, where he can choose the winners. Any thoughts? Oh yeah, I would definitely do Deep Space Nine. You could have because Deep Space Nine is kind of a little island unto itself. So yeah, you could have it start out. I would love to do an episode where Quark basically invents pro wrestling. Maybe it's something that has fallen into history. Like humans don't really do it anymore. The art form doesn't really exist anymore in the 24th century. So Quark kind of invents it. You know, there's like a combat sport that becomes popular on Deep Space Nine, and Quark promotes some fights. And then he realizes that he can make more money if he works the fights, you know, if instead of real contests, they are prearranged, and he kind of invents professional wrestling. I think that would be great. I think that would be hilarious. And, you know, there's a lot of potential there, but other than that, if we didn't go that direction, I kind of like the idea of maybe wrestling does still exist, but it's exclusively an Earth kind of thing. And the other planets, the other societies kind of look down on it. And Klingons really hate it because they're like, why would you fake a fight? Like, what about boxing? What about mixed martial arts? What about like ritual combat where you're actually having a fight? Like, why would you prearrange a fight with your enemy? Like that would go completely against the Klingon mindset. So I think you could get something out of that too. Like maybe have, you know, do it as a TNG episode, you know, where like some of the humans on board are talking about a pro wrestling match and Worf is just like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? You know, because he wouldn't get it because, you know, it goes against the Klingon mindset. Or maybe Worf would like it because he was raised on Earth. And other Klingons would be like, how can you watch wrestling, Worf? You're a Klingon. And they wouldn't get it because they're Klingons. And Worf is also a Klingon, but he was raised by humans. So he has a human perspective. There's all kinds of ways you could go with it. But yeah, I do like the idea of Quark inventing pro wrestling on Deep Space Nine. That has a lot of potential. Let's see. Next question. Last question from Russell. Hey, Steve. Before I begin my question, I just wanted to say I was saddened to hear of the passing of Gilbert Gottfried. I remember watching USA's Up All Night on Friday evenings. Also, Iago from Aladdin, not to mention his comedy stints, and he will be greatly missed. And I agree about that. Rest in peace, Gilbert Gottfried. Now on to today's topic, Star Trek. Since I haven't done a Q&A in this forum on Star Trek for a while, I would like to talk about Voyager. Yes, I know, not a favorite of yours, but I think aside from the obvious episode, The Thaw, Voyager still had a few solid episodes, one entitled Repentance. This is the episode that an inmate who is about to be executed accidentally gets his conscience restored via the doctor's nanoprobe treatment. Anyways, what are your thoughts of this episode? To me, it's one of my favorite of Voyager. Lastly, sorry to squeeze this in under the wire. Hope to see you shortly. Well, that's no problem, Russell. You got it in before the cutoff, so that's totally fine. I actually don't remember this episode. I looked it up on Memory Alpha after I saw your question, and I faintly remember, but I remember almost nothing about this episode. So I will take your word for it that it is a good episode, but it's not in my brain. So I don't know, but the premise sounds good. I think the best Voyager episodes tended to be ones that had just a really solid Star Trek premise, and it got to be a Voyager episode because Voyager was the Star Trek show that was on at that point. you know? I mean, Deep Space Nine was on too, but Deep Space Nine by that point had kind of gotten into its groove and was doing its own thing. And if you had just like a spec script for a standalone, really strong Star Trek premise, you would probably actually be, you know, if your story was strong enough, you'd probably be better off pitching it to Voyager than to Deep Space Nine, because Voyager was like a blank slate. Because Voyager was, everything basically restarted, you know, at the beginning of every episode anyway. So if you had a really great standalone Star Trek script, Voyager was the way to go. And most, if not all, of the really good Voyager episodes are like that. They're stories that don't even really have potential consequences beyond that episode, like the Thaw, you know, like the episodes where that are kind of like old school classic Star Trek episodes, where they visit a planet, they find a problem on this planet, they involve themselves, and then at the end, everything is wrapped up and they move on to the next planet, right? Those kinds of things, like the Thaw, like this episode Repentance that you're describing that I don't remember, like those rigidly if you can, Voyager works is the kind, because they refuse to do any kind of continuity, because they refuse to do any kind of lasting character development for the most part of the characters, because every week it was like the show reset back to square one. If you could have a really solid standalone premise, that was the best like format for Voyager. So most of the really good Voyager episodes are like that. Episodes that really could have been episodes of any Star Trek show. It didn't have to be a Voyager episode. It was just a really good idea for a Star Trek story, and Voyager happened to be the show that they made it on. Those were the best Voyager episodes, because Voyager as a show was so bland and such a blank slate that it doesn't really matter anyway, you know. So anyway, yeah, I'm sorry I don't remember your favorite episode better than I do. But that's the last patron and member question. So I will turn my attention now to you folks in the live chat, and we will hang out for the next, let's say 48 minutes or so until 8 o'clock my time. And by the way, it's linked in the description, and I tweeted about it earlier today, but tonight, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, so about an hour or so after this show ends, over on my friend Raven's channel, I'm going to be a guest on Raven's Nest live stream tonight, starting at 9 Eastern. And we're going to talk about Star Trek. We're going to talk about Star Trek Picard. So if you're not sick of me yet and you want to see me talk about Star Trek some more, about an hour after this show is over, jump on over to Raven's channel. And again, it's linked in the description of this video. And watch us talk about Star Trek there for a little while. But anyway, let's see what's going on in the live chat. How is everybody? 255 AD says, none of them ever asked for my forgiveness. Are you aware Hannah wants your forgiveness? No, but again, I'm not interested in giving it out. Hannah was a grown-up. I mean, I realize a lot of things in Hannah's life have changed since we were more acquainted, but I mean, I think I was dimly aware of it. I have not been contacted directly by Hannah or by someone on her behalf. So, you know, but I think I heard somebody mention that a while ago. But no, I'm not. If Hannah wants my forgiveness, Hannah's going to have to live with not getting it. Michael Hanneline says, how much lore do you think a writer should have in their series Bible versus how much lore should actually show up in the narrative? Well, see, put as much lore in the series Bible as you think you need. I mean, the series Bible can be nothing but lore. That's the series Bible. Throw anything, if you just think of random stuff, throw it in the series Bible. Like, I'm completely okay with that. There should be no more on the show other than what serves the story being told. You know, there should be no scenes of a character saying, here's the backstory of this thing, or hey, here's something I bet you didn't know. You know, and they do an info dump or a lore dump about something that doesn't have anything to do with the story. It's all about what serves the story being told. So I mean, if you want to think up a whole bunch of lore and a whole bunch of backstory for stuff and keep it in the series Bible, that's fine. There's no limit to that as far as I'm concerned. I don't care. But what comes on screen should be only what serves the story. So if you want to get some of your lore on screen, come up with a way that it makes sense in the story and that it makes the story better. Super chat from John Burns, who says, your Quark episode needs a Klingon Dana White. Oh, man, that's a good idea. Or perhaps an Ensign's podcast with a rival UFC Klingon group. Klingon Joe Rogan, anyone? That's such a good idea. Yes, Quark's pro wrestling league takes off and becomes super popular, and there's a Klingon who is promoting legitimate fights who gets pissed off at Quark, and they become rivals, and the Klingon is promoting genuine athletic contests, and Quark is promoting worked pro wrestling matches. Oh, that's a good idea, man. That's a really good idea. Lisa Garrison asks, have you had a chance to catch any baseball games this season? Not yet. No, I have not watched a game yet. 255 AD says, I got into arguments with my dad about the welfare state, and he said, I just care about me and my family, not layabouts. How do you deal with someone who thinks that? I mean, you and your family are not the only people in society, like, you and your family are not the only ones here. We live in a society, man. Maybe you've heard. We live in a community. We need to take care of each other. If there are moral reasons and economic reasons why the less fortunate, the least fortunate should be lifted up and taken care of. It's better for everybody. It's better for you and your family if you look after the so-called layabouts, right? People don't live in a vacuum. Yannick Muller says, I just finished re-watching Roman Holiday. Such a great movie. I was wondering what you think of Audrey Hepburn as an actress. First of all, I love Roman Holiday. It's one of my favorite. I think it's easily my favorite romantic comedy. I mean, that's kind of slim pickings. Romantic comedy isn't a very good genre for me, but Roman Holiday is a wonderful movie. And yes, Audrey Hepburn is great in it. If Audrey Hepburn has the right kind of role in the right movie, she is wonderful. I thought she was wonderful in Roman Holiday. I thought she was wonderful in Sabrina. Didn't really like her in Breakfast at Tiffany's, but then again, Breakfast at Tiffany's overall is a really rotten movie, so it's not her fault. She just doesn't lift it up very much, But no, I think in the right part, with a good enough part, Audrey Hepburn was a fantastic, wonderful actress for sure. Geigen Greg with a super chat says, is there anything more hideous and god-awful than those early TNG Vulcan shoulder pads? What an eyesore. Some menacing evil empire. Vulcan shoulder pads. You mean Romulan shoulder pads? Yeah. The Romulan, the quilted look for the Romulans was not the best look, but they were trying something. They had a budget. Captain John Burns of the super chat says, Captain Worf online series directed by Tarantino, where Brent Spiner plays a special guest star who dies in the intro of every episode. RE Police Squad. I would watch it every week. 255 AD. Yes, that's a good idea. Should I try telling my dad he should support the welfare state because a member of his family might need it one day? Yeah, absolutely. Because that's true. That's true. Fabio Ecklart says, I do have a question. We all saw a drop in the smartness of Star Trek in recent productions. How do you think the franchise can survive with that essential part lost? I guess it depends on what you mean by the smartness. I mean, it's like the current season of Picard that I have had a very low opinion of. It's not so much, you're right that I don't think it's a very smart show, but it suffers because the writing is not smart in the sense that it makes basic mistakes on a technical level, on a craft level that drag the whole thing down. You know, it's smart. It's not like it's not socially smart or politically smart or whatever. It's not smart in the sense that the plotting doesn't make any sense and the characters don't behave in ways that make any sense. And I don't know what anything is about, and I don't know what anybody's motivations are. And I don't have enough to form any kind of expectations for anything, so that those expectations can either be fulfilled or, you know, the other thing. Why did I blank on defied? There you go. Speaking of intelligent writing, but yeah, I think that's the big problem. You know, I think the intelligent writing has to start with a solid foundation of here's how you tell a story. Here's how you write an episode. Here's how you make a character have clear, understandable motivation and goals that they are trying to achieve that you can then play with as the storyteller. I think that's the biggest problem. And if they don't figure out how to do that, or rather if they don't remember how to do that, then it's going to be a big problem. You know? Super chat from Geigen Greg says, I know Star Trek content makes up the bulk of your output, but do you plan on making any future comic content? Yes, absolutely. Yes. I'm going to make future comic content. I'm going to do more Superman and Batman videos. I would love to do more videos about goofy old Silver Age comics. Yes, there will definitely be more comic content for sure. I have ideas for stuff. I'm probably in the next month or so, there will be more comic related content. Yes. Cause I love making those videos and I know people like those. So for sure. Subverted. Yes, Dana. Thank you. Not defied. Subverted. Yes. I could not think of that. So thank you very much. 255 AD. What if the first Klingon Federation president was Alexander? No, it will not be Alexander. No. Alexander would be referenced in dialogue, but Alexander would not appear in the show. And Alexander definitely would not be the first Klingon president. No, it would be a new character. It would be a new character. John Burns of the Super Chat says, or a Steve Shives Quark comic. Yeah, I could actually. They're about to release a Quark 8-inch action figure over the summer, and I think I would like to get one so I could write Quark into my action figure comics. Super Chat from the Lady Eternal, who says, "Hi Steve, longtime lurker here. Would Quark resurrect pro wrestling or adapt Tsunkatsu from the Voyager logs of the Delta Quadrant? Also, have you seen Our Flag Means Death on HBO?" I have not seen Our Flag Means Death, but I've heard good reviews of it, so I might check it out at some point. And no, if I were writing it, it would definitely not be a Voyager reference. He would not adapt Tsunkatsu. He would invent something new. And he wouldn't call it pro wrestling either. He would call it something else, but it would be pro wrestling is what it would be. Another super chat from Stephen Hart. Thank you, Stephen. Do you read any modern comics, whether it's issue by issue or just waiting for the paperbacks? Not at the moment. I was reading the new version of the Batman Adventures. I think it's called The Batman Adventures Continue. I was reading that last year, but I've kind of fallen behind on that too. But no, I'm not reading any modern comics currently. And another super chat from Kirak 2011 who says, "Hey Steve, I've been watching DS9. I just wanted your opinion on something in the episode Treachery, Faith, and the Great River." And then I'll wait for the second half. Natalie Muller says, recently found the Late Seating podcast. Just wanted to say how much I enjoy it. It's a pleasure to listen to, even if I don't know the film. Would love an episode on Buster Keaton's The General. So would I. I would love to review The General. I love Buster Keaton. I love Buster Keaton very much. Radical Bacon says, want to buy that old house in Hagerstown. With what money? I can't afford to buy a house. I'm not buying that. That is a beautiful house. If it's the same house you messaged me about last week or earlier this week, beautiful house. but no, I'm not buying. I can't afford to buy a house. Um, and here's the second half from Kirak. What do you think the female founder would have done had she known Odo was on the same ship as Weiyun 6? Also, what do you think he would have done to Damar and Weiyun 7? If about them destroying the ship. I see what you're saying. How would the female changeling have reacted to the attempt to kill Odo? I don't think she would have liked it very much. I don't think she would have accepted the rationalizations of Weiyun and Damar as to why it was okay to destroy the ship. I think she would have been quite upset. Yes, I think she was pretty absolutist in, she did not want to kill Odo. She thought that changelings should not harm each other and wanted to bring Odo back into the fold. I think she would have been quite upset. Thank you, Some Random Geek. I'm glad you enjoy late. I love late seating. I know we talk more on this channel about Ensign's Log for obvious reasons because I do a lot of Star Trek stuff on my own. But I love late seating is awesome. I love late seating so much. I love talking about movies. 255 AD says Savile was so trusted because the BBC kept giving him shows and the BBC was trusted. Does the fact there's no American equivalent of the BBC mean you couldn't have an American Savile? I think it makes it less likely. I don't know if it's impossible, but it makes it less likely, yeah. Because there is no one single, I mean, you have other TV besides the BBC, but the BBC is like obviously the clear dominant organization. And we don't really have that in the United States. There's not like one single broadcast network that is clearly the dominant one. So yeah, it makes it, I don't think it's impossible, but it makes it far less likely. Yeah. Duralta Trekkie says, so the WB Discovery merger is done, and I so hope that the Snyderites don't get their will. Am I petty? If you are, I am. Okay. Radical Bacon, did the female changeling ever choose a name? I don't think she did. I think, at least in the script, she was always referred to as the female changeling. I don't believe she ever chose a name, no. Racing Jitter says, hi, Steve. Have you been to many Star Trek conventions? Any signed memorabilia, something that stands out? No, I have never been to a Star Trek convention. I have never really wanted to go to one. I probably never will go to one unless for some reason I'm invited to one to be like a presenter or something. Like if Jason and Dana and I get invited to do an Ensign's Log something at a convention, I would want to do that. But to just go to a convention to go, no, I have no interest in that. No. Like, I had a lot of friends who went to the one in Chicago recently, and a couple people asked me, they're like, are you going to go to the Chicago convention? And, there was never even remotely a chance that I was going to do that. First of all, I didn't want to travel to Chicago. I didn't have time to and couldn't afford to. And I mean, even if there was like a Star Trek convention in like Baltimore or DC, both of which are like right in my neighborhood, basically, like they're like an hour away. So it would not be a problem for me to go, but I just don't know if I would want to. It's just not my thing. I don't really see the point. I don't care about getting people's autographs, or getting a picture taken with somebody. It's just not my thing. So no, I'm not interested in going to a convention, like just to go to a convention. Normative asks, doing anything on the Batman? Yes. I guess probably pretty soon now because it comes out on HBO Max in a couple of days. I do have an idea for a video essay about the Batman that I'm going to make after it comes out on HBO Max. So maybe in the next I'm not sure. I don't have it scheduled, but in the next few weeks, because I thought that was a really good movie, and I can't wait to watch it again. And I have an idea for at least one video about it, and I might do more because I really, really like the Batman. Red Spiral Ray with a super chat says, I know you dislike Man of Steel, but do you think a film where Soups is learning how to use his powers can work, or should he already know them? Oh, no, we can do a movie like that. Yeah, there's no reason why a movie about Superman learning to use his powers couldn't be good. No, that wasn't the problem with Man of Steel at all. Yeah, you could easily do a Superman movie about him learning to use his powers for sure. Another super chat from Geigen Greg. Don't you think it was awfully presumptuous of assimilated Picard to call himself the cutest of Borg? Granted, it's a very low bar, but still. Well, yeah, but he's obviously, that's always been a part of Picard's character, that he's a little full of himself, you know? So I feel like it fits. Like once he was a Borg and his ego had kind of been spread into the collective and he was sort of free in that way, like he could say, you know what? I am the cutest of Borg. I'm just going to say it. Why should I pretend otherwise? So I feel like it's in his character for sure. Radical Bacon finally got a job. Congratulations. That's awesome. Geraldo Trekkie says, divorced from the question if it is logical or not, what did you think about Girardi's singing? I thought it was fine. I think Alison Pill seemed like she was a good singer. I mean, it didn't like blow me away. I wasn't like, holy shit, what a voice. But I thought she was good. You know, certainly no. In terms of her singing ability, nothing at all for her to be embarrassed about at all. I mean, I think Alison Pill in general has done a very good job this season with dreadful material. Like she as an actor has done terrific. They all have. Like it's a very solid cast. I think they're all doing the best they can with scripts that feel like they were jotted down on a napkin 5 minutes before they started shooting the scene. And yeah, I think her singing was good. 255 AD says, you said you liked Regeneration earlier. You don't regard it as painless fan service. It's definitely fan service, you know, having the Borg show up on Enterprise, but the story was good enough that it justified it. And as I think I've said many times, my number one rule, my number one concern is the story that I'm being told right now. Or if I'm writing it, the story I'm telling right now. That's the most important thing. And Regeneration was a good enough episode that it grabbed me, it pulled me in, it made me care, it got me emotionally invested, and I thought it was a really good episode. So yeah, is it fan service to bring is it like a ratings ploy perhaps to bring the Borg into Enterprise? Yeah, totally. Under normal circumstances, the Borg don't belong in Enterprise, but they found a way to justify it, and the story itself I thought was good enough that they pulled it off. So, you know, I think it works. And like, I think it's one of Enterprise's best episodes, honestly. Radical Bacon. Dean Cain and Kevin Sorbo walk into a bar. What next? Lucy Lawless and Brandon Routh run out and beat the shit out of him. Norman Bookwood, it made the Borg scary, creepy again. Yes, absolutely. In fact, I would say it's the last time the Borg have felt scary or creepy. The Enterprise Borg episode was a better Borg episode than any of the Borg episodes on Voyager. It made the Borg seem like an intimidating villain for the first time since First Contact, if not before. It depends on how intimidating you think the Borg are as a villain in First Contact. Yeah, it made them feel like a potentially unstoppable villain for the first time in a very long time. Yeah, Regeneration is a really good episode. Dorothy Draghi says, you got to admit the twist that Dr. Baltar is Picard's dad. That was good. I guess it was, it's nice to see that actor. I wish they had given him better material to work with. I'd say that's the thing. I know a lot of people were like making a big deal about that. I saw that and I was just like, oh, hey, that guy. Like, didn't really mean anything to me. Like some people said it was stunt casting. I'm like, is it really stunt casting? He's just, I guess. Oh, hey, that guy. You know? Race and Jitter says the Q&As are the best part of any pop culture con. Some amazing behind-the-scenes stories of the production, antics on set, super interesting and fun. Yeah, but I can see a lot of those on YouTube. I'd rather watch somebody post a video of it on YouTube after the fact. But I will emphasize, as I always do, when I talk about things I don't like, I obviously a lot of people love conventions and more power to them. Like, I'm not trying to piss on anybody's parade. If you enjoy conventions, then I think that's wonderful. And I hope you get to go to a bunch of them and I hope you have a great time, but it's just not my thing. Pedro Noguera says, I'm reading Henry Farrell's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Have you ever seen the movie? Such a masterpiece. Not many people talk about it, at least in Brazil. And the book is great too. Yes, I have seen the movie. Yes, I have seen the movie. I have not read the book, but I have seen the movie. The movie is great. I agree with you. It's a fantastic movie. John Burns says, would you be willing to go to Calgary if you were invited? Invited for what? What am I being invited to Calgary for? Some Random Geek says, don't you like hanging out with people? It depends on the people. It depends on how many of them there are. And it depends on how long I have to hang out with them. If all those factors line up in my favor, then I love hanging out with people. Siraka Vulcan says, do you have a cat or a dog? At the moment, I do not have a cat or a dog. I had a cat for many years when I was married, but when my wife and I split up, she kept the cat. And so, no, I do not have a pet of any kind right now. I had, when I was a child into my young adult years, I had a dog, Star, who passed away of old age when I was, I think, 21 or 22, something like, no, it was 21. She passed away when I was 21. But so she was my dog when I was a child. And then I had my cat, Audie, for many years when my wife and I were together. But at the moment, I don't have a pet, no. The Lady Eternal with a super chat, thank you very much, says, have you ever seen The West Wing? The question about convincing people to support the welfare state reminded me of a monologue in the season 3 premiere. It's erudite and intelligent and holds up well 20 years later. I have watched a bit of The West Wing. I didn't watch every single episode, and I haven't gone back and rewatched it like on streaming, so I don't remember that episode or that monologue, but I will take your word for it because I enjoyed The West Wing. It's a fairy tale. but it's a nice fairy tale, and I enjoyed it a lot. Lisa Garrison said, you don't think this week's Picard had interesting things to say about mental health? I mean, maybe it did underneath all of the shit. I mean, it didn't say them in a way that I found all that compelling. I think any time that you do something that tries to raise awareness of mental health problems and the difficulty that those bring to people and that, people who have mental health issues deserve help and compassion and access to necessary services. Like, I think that's all wonderful. But I mean, like, I don't think it redeems this week's Picard episode. I just think it's a badly written show. And actually, I mean, I think it kind of doesn't it kind of shift guilt onto Picard's mentally ill mother? Doesn't it kind of make it seem like she was the problem? Because before it was like Picard thought that his father was this abusive monster. It turns out, oh no, my mother just had a severe mental illness. But the way it's done, it makes it seem like she was the problem instead of someone who had a problem that needed to be helped. I don't know. Super chat from the Lady Eternal. Bringing Up Baby is a classic screwball Katharine Hepburn, Cary Grant comedy. Ever seen it? Yes, I watched that actually in a film class in college. It was, I agree. It is a classic. I really enjoyed Bringing Up Baby. Super chat from Kirak 2011 says, at some point I will be going back to my NYPD Q&A. But I just recently watched the episode Raging Bulls, and that fight scene between Fancy and Sipowicz still surprises me. Also, what are your thoughts on Szymanski? You'll have to refresh my memory on Szymanski. The name rings a bell, but I can't remember the character. But yeah, the fight scene between Sipowicz and Fancy in the bullpen in the locker room is great. Oh, Jesus Christ. 255 AD asks, is regeneration better or worse for the characters not being aware of what's at stake? Like if they didn't destroy the ship, Earth would have been assimilated. I think it's better. I think it's better that they're unaware. Yeah. John Burns, the Calgary Comic and Entertainment Expo. No, I don't think that would be enough to get me to Calgary. Sorry. Yeah, Norman, exactly. That was kind of my thought. Locking Picard's mother in a room is a good address of mental health issues. It didn't seem like, I mean, I don't speak from experience. I have to be careful here. Like, I have never dealt with mental illness, either in terms of dealing with it myself or having people close to me who have like severe mental illness, certainly of the type that Picard's mother is depicted as having. So I can't, I don't know, but it didn't strike me as a terribly positive depiction. But like I say, I don't have like firsthand experience. Siraka Vulcan says, I feel episodic Trek has legs because of rewatchability. I would agree with that. I do think the standalone episodes are more rewatchable than the serialized stuff. I have liked, like, I really ended up liking, for the most part, I really liked season 2 of Star Trek Discovery. I liked, for the most part, season 3 of Discovery. I didn't really like the most recent season, but there were particular episodes, especially in the first half, that I thought were really good. The second half kind of lost me. But so, I mean, I have enjoyed quite a bit of Star Trek Discovery. I haven't rewatched any of it. Like, I watched, except I think there might have been one episode I rewatched as part of research for a video. But like, other than something like that, I haven't rewatched any of it. Most of those episodes, even ones I really liked, I watched them one time, and that was it. Whereas I've seen even there are like mediocre episodes of TNG or Deep Space Nine that I've seen 5 or 6 times, you know. And part of that is they've been around for a lot longer, and I've had a lot longer to watch them. But even so, like, I've never even really had the desire to rewatch Discovery or Picard. Even bits of it that I have that I have genuinely enjoyed. I just haven't felt like going back and rewatching it. So I do think part of it is that there aren't that many standalone episodes. Member message from some random geek who says, have you seen Arsenic and Old Lace? If you have, what are your thoughts on it? It is a family favorite of ours. I love Arsenic and Old Lace. It is such a great screwball comedy, such a great farce. And speaking of Cary Grant, like, oh my God. Yeah. Such a funny movie. Such a funny movie. Cary Grant was so good because Cary Grant, he has this image to us today, this classic old school, like golden age of Hollywood movie star, very glamorous, very suave, you know, and he was in many of his movies. He was a very dapper, suave, like classic leading man guy. But when he did comedy, he was capable and willing to just throw his dignity out the window. There are moments in Arsenic and Old Lace, like all that stuff where he's tied to the chair and he has his a gag on, and he's like, his eyes are bugging out and he's screaming through the gag and he's like, I mean, it's no dignity at all. He's basically like a cartoon character and just overacting and mugging up a storm, but it works for that movie. And he's so good and so funny. Yeah, and I mean, that's just one part of it. But yeah, Arsenic and Old Lace is a great movie. It's a great movie. Hmm. 255 AD, yeah, if you want, yeah, if you want me to possibly address your comment in a comment response video, you need to actually leave a comment on the video. Yeah, I'm not going to remember from the live chat. Pedro, no, I didn't go to film school. I went to just a regular liberal arts college. I didn't go to film school, but they had film classes that you could take, and I took as many as I possibly could fit into my schedule. Yeah. And Gerald Trekkie, no, I don't, no, I've never seen The Truth About Charlie. And actually, come to think of it, I don't think I've seen Charade either. That is certainly a hole in my movie watching. Yes, I don't think I've seen Charade either. Um, yeah, Gerald Trekkie, North by Northwest for sure. Yes, North by Northwest. 255 AD, I went to, the first half of my college career, I went to Hagerstown Community College here in town. And then the rest of it, I went to Shepherd University in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. The Lady Eternal says with a super chat, abusers often isolate their victims by convincing others the victim is mentally ill. Sad to see this still happens in the 24th century and people believe the abuser. Excellent point. Excellent point. Yes. I don't know if that will turn out to be the case in Picard, but yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking too. It's like it doesn't seem like a very healthy, like his father doesn't seem like, still, even with the revelations of the most recent episode, like his father doesn't seem like that much of a good guy, does he? And if he is, then it makes the depiction of mental illness in the show kind of shitty, doesn't it? I don't know. Like I said, I don't have like firsthand experience. I don't really know. Super chat from Geigen Greg says, I think Star Trek Picard would be better if Tasha Yar showed up dressed as a librarian and called the viewer a bad, bad boy. Or is that just me? I don't know. I mean, I think I would certainly enjoy that on some level. I don't think it would make the show any better, but that particular part of it might be pretty good. You know? Super chat from Maiku Wotaharu says, I just want to show some appreciation for your Trek Actually videos. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Radical Bacon says, what made you happy today? Just smacking that microphone just now. What made me happy today? Going for a walk was nice. It was a beautiful day today. The sun was out. It was about 70 degrees. I got to take a nice walk through the park, listen to some music. That was nice. Yeah, there are other things that make me happy, but if I had to pick one thing, it would probably be getting to take a nice walk. Yeah. Gerald Trekkie says, we know that JL's dad is an asshole since Tapestry. Yeah, but we didn't necessarily know that he was like an abusive husband type asshole. You know, just more of like a paternalistic, grumpy dad asshole. You know, the potential spousal abuse is a new wrinkle that the writers of Picard threw in. Thank you, 255AD. You just left your comment under the Trek Horror video. I will look for it and try to respond to it the next time I do a comment response. Thank you very much. Super chat from Hyperion 9997. Thanks for the videos. We don't agree on Discovery, but I appreciate your work. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you being generous there, and I appreciate you being here and watching my stuff. You don't have to agree on everything. I'm glad that you take some value from what I do. That means a lot. And Clemens Load, I don't think I have seen the movie The Guilty. So... Oh, Josh Cox, have I seen Gentleman's Agreement? Yes. Gentleman's Agreement is a really good movie. Yeah, Gregory Peck. Yeah, Gentleman's Agreement is a really good movie. One of those socially relevant movies. Yeah, I like Gentleman's Agreement quite a lot. 255 AD says, where did you live when you were in college? Can you live in dorms as a mature student? I didn't live in dorms. I lived at home. I was married at the time. Actually, I don't know. No, I wasn't married the entire time. We got married while I was in college. So, but we were together. We were living together. So I just lived at home where I usually lived. And I don't know if I could have lived in the dorm if I'd wanted to or not. I never looked into it because I never intended to. And Derogatory Trekkie, no, I have not seen The King's Man. I have not seen the first two Kingsman movies either. I heard they're good. I hear the first one at least is very good, but I haven't seen them. Pedro Nagira says, remember that TNG episode Night Terrors? I was wondering why you never mentioned it in your horror and Trek video. I really love that episode. No, that's a good episode. I didn't want to mention too many episodes because I didn't want the video to be super long. And also I didn't want it to be just a list video where I was like, and here's another horror episode, and here's another one, and here's another one. So I singled out a few for just sort of quick reference and then focused on doing like my smart ass summary shtick for 3 of them and made that sort of the heart of the video. But yeah, I mean, there were, like I say in the video, like there are a lot of episodes I didn't mention that I could have that are good or at least memorable that have horror themes. And Night Terrors is certainly one of those. Yes. Lisa says the mental illness that the episode handles well is Picard's own trauma. He repressed the events of his bipolar mother attempting to kidnap him before abandoning him during a manic episode. Okay, I can see that. Yeah. Showing Picard's trauma in a sensitive way. I guess that's because I automatically jumped to the depiction of his mother, but you're right. I mean, I guess I can take Picard's, but again, it would have been more effective if it was part of a good story, which I don't think it was. But yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that. Kirak 2011 says, I'm a patron on another channel who does reactions and as a bonus does pilot tier reactions of your own choice. I chose the Incredible Hulk pilot. So do I continue with season or do I have her skip to my favorite Married? I mean, Married is a hell of an episode. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've watched The Incredible Hulk. I can't remember a whole lot else about I mean, I remember the first season being pretty good, but I can't really remember what some other episodes are after the pilot. So, I mean, I would say go ahead and skip to Married because I remember Married. Married is very good. Red Spiral Ray with a super chat says, I worry about Republicans coming after the mentally ill to further lie about mass shootings and gun control. Do you think it's a possibility? Unfortunately, yes, I do. I mean, God, they're back on a homophobia kick, and we all thought that was over with. We thought that they would have been forced to move on from demonizing and vilifying gay people, at least. But they're back on that. So, of course, that it's possible that they'll turn on mentally ill people. You know, I mean, they will demonize any marginalized group if they think it'll scare people into voting for them. And it sucks, and I wish it wasn't true. But, I mean, yeah, unfortunately, I think that's a very real possibility. The Lady Eternal with another super chat says, going to drop a comment on the Monsters review on the abuse versus mental illness topic. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you for being so generous with the super chats tonight. I appreciate you. And I'm glad that you take some value or some use from my work. That means a lot. Yeah, see, Derogatory Trekkie, we have the exact opposite opinion. I mean, I didn't think the first season of Picard was great, but I wound up mostly liking it, or at least liking it more than I disliked it. But I think the second season is just garbage. I mean, it's just awful. Like on a basic level, it's just badly written on a fundamental level. I've said it's like they're not even shooting the first draft of scripts. They're shooting like story notes that they came up with during their first story meeting and didn't go any further than that. Like, it's so underwritten. It's shocking, frankly. 255 AD, it wouldn't surprise me if they turn on interracial marriage. It would not surprise me at all. Anyway, it is time to wrap up the stream. I have a few minutes before 8, so I will go ahead and start bringing this to a close. Some Random Geek, thank you very much. Charitylinks.page. Don't forget the charity links. The link is in the description. Help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand. Very important. And thanks, of course, to Some Random Geek for creating that and continuing to curate that. Also, don't forget, if you want to support my channel, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or by just clicking the join button and becoming a channel member. Members and patrons at any level get to submit questions ahead of time for Ask Away, and also get to vote in the polls to choose upcoming Trek Actually topics. And super chat from Stephen G. Clanar. Thank you very much. Says, do you think this would make a good premise for a sycophantic fanboy? Super chat donation guy. I think that would be a fantastic premise, Stephen. Yes. Thank you very much for the super chat. Also, don't forget that I co-host a couple of podcasts as a part of the Let Me Listen podcast family. Late Seating, the movie review podcast, and the Ensign's Log, the Star Trek-themed comedy podcast. And speaking of the Ensign's Log, if you look in the description of this very live stream, you will see a link to the Ensign's Log Season 4 live Q&A live stream, which will be streaming tomorrow night on this very channel at 7 p.m. Eastern. It will be me, Jason, and Dana all live on the stream at the same time, answering your questions from the chat, talking about the show. It's always a ton of fun when we do these between seasons of the Ensign's Log. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be awesome. So that is tomorrow night on this channel at 7 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, before that, over on Dana's channel, she will be doing, starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, her semi-monthly, bi-weekly live stream, the Saturday 6. So you can watch Dana do the Saturday 6 at 6 on her channel. And then when that's over, jump back on over to this channel and watch the Ensign's Log live stream starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. So I hope you can join us for all of that. Also, don't forget, later tonight, in about an hour, I will be on my friend Raven's channel. That is also linked in the description. And we're going to talk Star Trek. We're going to talk about this season of Picard so far and what we think about that. So hopefully that'll be interesting and fun too. I think that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for the questions and the super chats. And for all of you who are patrons and members, thank you for your support, and have a good weekend. Be safe, take care of yourselves, look after yourselves, and I'll see you next time, everybody. So take care. Thanks for watching.